magical hands, welcome to the channel. If it's your first time here, hi, my name is Jessica, and if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for coming back. Today's tutorial, I'll be showing you guys how to make this simple corporate dress with a folded cape collar, and this tutorial is going to be a full tutorial, meaning there will be no part 1 or part 2. This is the whole tutorial for this dress. And also, if you end up liking this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. This is going to encourage us to make more. And also don't forget to share, because this will help YouTube recommend our channel to other people as well. And also don't forget to subscribe if you have not subscribed to the channel yet. And without any further ado, let's get into this video proper. I've gone ahead to draft out the basic bodice of a dress. So I have my armhole line, my bust point, my under bust. I did not really line across it because it will not be necessary. And I have my half length line, which is my shoulder to half length, my hip line, and the full length. So the full length of the pattern paper stops at 39 inches, but I want the full length of my dress to be 44. So we'll add that up while we are cutting on the fabric. So on the armhole line, I will go in by half an inch. I will mark the midpoint of the armhole, which is 4 inches. I'll go in by half an inch, and then I'll use my curve ruler to connect to get the armhole curve. So place your ruler in this way. The base of the ruler will be touching the extended line, and a part of it will be touching the half inches I was moved in, and also the other part of it will be at that top. So one way you have your armhole curve. So next, I'm going to mark the neck width of the dress, which I'll use 3 inches, and for the depth I use 3 inches. You can use 2 inches for the depth if you want to, but I don't know why I use 3 inches. I actually wanted to use 2 inches, but I found myself using 3 inches. So I have drafted out the neckline. Next thing will be to mark our dart. So I'm going to mark 4 inches, which is my apex measurement, my nipple to nipple measurement. I'll mark that from the bust point to the half length. So I'll make a straight line across that point. We'll just get the dart first, and then I'm going to extend that line as seen to meet the midpoint of the armhole. On the left side, I'm going to mark half an inch apart from the apex measurement. On that half length line, I'll just connect it in a slanted form to meet the bust point. So on the right side, I'm going to mark 1.5 inch apart from the apex measurement, which is because I am quite busty, and if you are more bustier, you can use 2 inches. The main thing is the difference between your bust to your under bust. So I just used 1.5 inch at that point. Now I will connect as seen directly to meet the bust point. Now you know that the half length is usually the waistline. So if you are drafting a skirt, let's say you are making a skirt, that half length downwards, you are definitely going to mark 4 inches for that. So we are going to extend this dart by 4 inches. We are going to extend it, and we are going to mark all these dotted lines downwards. First of all, we are going to mark the apex measurements. We'll extend it downwards, which is 4 inches. Then we are going to connect everything to meet it as seen. We're going to connect everything to meet it. It's just like making a skirt dart. So this is the actual dart for the front piece of this blouse. So I'm just going to shade in that box because I'll be cutting that part out. Now that I have my dart, I'm just going to go ahead and remove half an inch on the top parts, just to give it a beautiful curve at that bust area. So I also shade that part out because I'll be cutting that part out. Now I can go ahead and extend my apex measurement downwards. This extension that I'm doing is not a dart actually. It's so that I can have a sewing line on that part downwards. That is the aim of this whole extension that I'm doing, just to have the sewing line. So you can see where our dart stopped. It stopped at 4 inches under the half length. So just connect your apex measurements, and this is everything we actually need to do for the front piece. Now I can start marking my round bodice measurements. On the bust point, I'll mark my round bust measurement divided by 4. On the half length, I'll mark my round half length measurements divided by 4. So if you look at that shaded part, which you are going to be cutting out, we are going to mark the space that is there. We are going to replace it on the other side, which is 2 inches. And then on the hip line, I will mark my round hip measurements. So you can see that there is no dart extension to the hip line, so we are not replacing anything. You just go ahead and put your hip measurements right on the full length. So you can actually reduce the hip measurements you are planning on the full length by by 1 inch if you want this to be a pencil dress. But I want mine to be a straight dress. So just connect all those lines together, extend your bust line up to your armhole line, and you can see that all these lines are actually looking straight. There is actually no hip curve for now, but by the time I sew up my dart, you will see that the hip curve is going to come out. So go ahead and start cutting. So now you can see that we have the bustier and we also have the dart. So we are just going to split the lower bodies. That's just all I wanted you guys to understand. So for the back piece, first thing I will do is to curve the armhole. So find the midpoint of the armhole, which is 4, and place your ruler from that point. Don't go in by half an inch, just curve directly to that point, and that will be the armhole curve of the back piece. That is the only difference, and also the fact that the back piece will be having a zip allowance. So you can see that for the back piece, I ruled out my under bust line. So I'm going to now mark the width of the neck, which is 3 inches, same thing I used for the front. And then for the depth of the neck, you're going to determine how deep you want this to be. If you want it to be very deep, you should be looking at 15 inches thereabout. But I came down 1 inch from my bust line, which is 12 inches. So I marked 12 inches for the neck depth. So also, you are going to connect the 3 inches on the width to meet the 12 inches on. You can connect it as seen, but you can connect it also using the curved side of your ruler. Whichever way you want to connect it, just connect those 2 points together. And then extend that part to the zip allowance. For the dart, we are going to start marking our apex measurements from the bust point to the under bust to the half length. Now, usually if you are marking a dart for your skirt, which we already said the half length is the same as the waistline, you will come down by 6 inches for the back piece. It's supposed to be close to the hip line, but not on the hip line. So the dart for the back piece will stop at 6 inches after the half length, which is usually like the skirt dart, and then which is close to the bum. Is going to give us the bum effect, that bum effect, if I'm saying it right. So that's where the dart is going to stop. So I'll just mark it as seen, connect a straight line on those my apex measurements as seen. And also the dart is supposed to actually start from the chest line. It's not supposed to start from the bust point. So I'll just extend my armhole line forward. So I'll indicate that line as the chest line, and that is where the dart is supposed to actually start from. So I'll mark my apex measurements on that same point, and I'll also extend it to meet it. So this is the reason why I ruled out the under bust line, because of the dart. So on the under bust line, we are going to mark half an inch apart from the apex measurements. So I'm going to connect as seen to meet the chest line, likewise to from the where the dart ends, the apex measurement ends, I'll connect as seen as well. So just connect all your darts using the apex, the half an inch apart on the under bust to connect it. So I'll shade those parts out, and this is everything for the back piece. So just go ahead and start marking your round bodice measurements. Make sure that all your measurements start from where the zip allowance ends. So mark your round bust measurements, and also replace what we have in that dart area, which is half an inch. If you notice from the beginning, I've not added any seam allowance. I'll add all my seam allowance while I'm cutting on the fabric. So my round waist measurements, when I mark it, my round under bust measurement, I'm going to replace what I have in that dart. And same thing for the half length, which is my round waist, which is your skirt waist as well. I'll mark what I have, my round waist measurement, divide by 4, replace what is on the dart on the other side. Now for the hip line, there is no dart on the hip line, so we'll just mark our round hip measurement, and then we are going to mark we are going to bring the hip measurements downwards to the full length. Please ignore how beautiful my hair looks. Now we can go ahead and connect those lines together. So we are going to split the back into two as well. So there are two ways you can do this. Is that you connect from that chest line to meet the armhole, or you extend it upwards straight to that way you are going to split the shoulders of this. So just mark your apex measurements downwards as well, same way we did to the front piece. Like I said, the lower part is not a dart, it's just like a division line. So we can go ahead and start cutting as well. So now I placed all the patterns on my fabric. I folded my fabric into two, and then I placed the front, the first piece of the front on the folded side of the fabric. The remaining parts I just placed them because I'm going to cut them in two separate pieces. So I added up to the length, like I said. You can see the back and the front. And for me to join the front, the first front to the second front, which is the center front to the side front, I added half an inch for sewing allowance, and then to the side front I added 1 inch. Likewise to the side back I added 1 inch. Also, I did not add any sewing allowance to the zip side because obviously the zip allowance is already an allowance on its own. So this is everything, guys. I just want to show you guys clearly because the reflection of the sun wouldn't just allow this to show clearly. So I hope we understand. I took my time to chalk this out, and then I'm going to cut. I am done cutting, and you can see what is left of the fabric. I just took my time so I could manage the fabric enough because I have only 2 yards of fabric, and also for the fabric I'm using a crepe fabric. So now I am going to start sewing with the front piece. So I'm going to take the back pieces and keep them aside. Arrange all your front pieces as seen. So you take to the sewing machine and sew out the half an inch allowance we used on that part. If you used 1 inch allowance at this part, make sure to take out all your allowances. I have sewn the front piece and I went ahead to iron this properly. I also ironed from inside, and also I'm going to keep this aside and move to the back piece. Arrange your back pieces as seen. Place the zip side in the middle and then place the other sides by the sides of the back piece. So both pieces are going to be for the left and the other two will be for the right. So go ahead and join those two together. Close up the dart lines. After sewing them up, we are going to place them on each other as seen so that we can shape the zip side before we can sew up the zip line. So place your tape from your shoulder to your hip line. My shoulder to my hip line is 26 inches, so I'm just going to chalk it. Also mark your under bust line, which is 14 inches for mine. So now that I've marked those two lines, on the under bust line I'll mark half an inch, and I'm going to connect it to meet the hip line, just as seen. I'll just extend that half an inch upwards. So we used 1.5 inch for the zip allowance. So I'm going to take half an inch at that point, and then from the hip line I'll come down a bit, let's say by 2 inches, and then I'll slant it down by half an inch. Now I'll go ahead and start marking the 1.5 inch that we marked for the zip allowance. Regardless of the fact that we've already taken out half an inch on some points, still go ahead and mark accurately 1.5 inch. So I'll just chalk it down and I'll go and sew that up. That will be how I'll be closing my zip up. So I'll come down by 2 inches from the hip line, and at that point I'm going to tighten the stitch, but from the other side upwards I'll do a loose stitch. So on the lower base I left some space for allowance, and the place that I have the loose stitch will be where the zip will be on. So 2 inches downwards is going to be tight. It's going to be like very tight stitch. So I'm just going to open this up with my iron so that when I'm fixing my zip, I know that I'm fixing my zip on the folded lines. And then for the base, the part where I put a slit, I will just use a hemming gum to close that up neatly. So now we'll place the front piece on the back piece and we'll sew out the sides, likewise the shoulder of the dress. So in order to cut the collar, I'm going to loosen the zip allowance a bit, and I'm going to mark around the neck width. Don't add the zip allowance, just mark around the actual neck width. I have 35 inches, so I'll be using 36. So the 1 inch I added will be for sewing allowance. So I'll divide 36 by 2, which gives me 18 inches. I'll fold my fabric into 2. Now place my tape and I'll mark the 18 inches. I lost some clips here, so this is the 18 inches I marked, that straight line. So I extended, I pulled it out to give it like an A look. You can make yours more wider, and this is how I got the collar. Also, you can reduce a bit of half of the collar, you can reduce it so that the back is not very big, but I think I'm okay with this. So I'll go ahead and duplicate this on a white fabric. For the white fabric, I'm using a regular lining. This is just to show you guys what it looks like to get the picture that we have. And also, if you want to, you can actually cut the second piece on Ankara fabric or also on the same fabric. So I just went ahead to cut this on a white fabric so you guys can see, but I actually use this with the normal black because I was actually using this for church and I was supposed to wear like all black, but I just had to show you guys what it will look like using white. And this regular lining does not relax at all. So if you want to use any other fabric, I would advise you use like crepe fabric as well, since the main fabric is crepe. Or if you are going to use a lining, make sure to use gum stay before you use the lining like I did, but I didn't use gum stay. So guys, I'm going to place it as seen. I'm just going to take my time to explain this very well. So you are going to sew as indicated, sew as seen, and once you sew that up, don't sew the other part. That's the part you use to attach to the collar. Now I'm going to flip the collar to the right face after I have sewn this up, after I've turned it. So after ironing, this is how I'll be placing it on the collar. I'm going to place it from inside, so like the sewing lines, the sewing face is going to be showing when you raise the collar up. It's not going to be showing inside the dress. So I'm going to place it as seen and I will sew. So by the time I sew, you will see that the white side will be showing. You can actually use white for both sides of the collar, but like I said, the plan was to use black, but I just wanted to use this white to explain. So far, this is what it is looking like. So I'm going to loosen up the zip allowance that we left. This is what the collar is looking like. And like I said, you can reduce it from the midpoint of the collar to the back so that the back will not be as bold as this, but I like the result that I have. So loosen up the zip allowance so you can put in your zip and put in your sleeve. This brings us to the end of this video, guys. I hope you guys learned something new, and please don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the like button. The like button usually encourages us. So please guys, and see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.